When you have a YouTube channel focused on the occult and you show people how to do magic rituals that transform humans into something more than human, you might get some comments like this, quote, disguised Satanism when a man says he is God or has a godlike frequency, end quote. But high magic isn't Satanism. Like, not at all. Satanism is a much different path, and the downward-facing pentagram is one of its flagship symbols. The traditional pentagram, the one that points upward, is a sacred shape. Now, the pentagram symbolizes many things, one of which is the human form, and it only becomes a satanic pentagram when flipped upside down. Welcome to MageSpace. Today, I'm answering questions and addressing comments on magic that will help you grow as a magus. Now, let's flush the satanic panic out of this sacred space. If you stand upright with your arms and legs out, you will find yourself in the shape of a pentagram. Your head is the point at the top, and the point at the top is going upward towards spirit, meaning that the essence of life, the juice of existence, comes from the divine intelligence above. The pentagram, by the way, was an early Christian symbol, and the cross was an early pagan symbol. The cross and the pentagram, amongst other things, stand for similar concepts of balance and harmony. Now, evil, if you want to call it that, I'm using clumsy terms like good and evil here for the sake of simplicity. Evil likes to invert what is good, and the downward-facing pentagram is an inversion of the original pentagram, just like the upside-down cross is an inversion of the cross. No, Satanism is not when a man or woman says that they are God or have a godlike frequency. Furthermore, when this man, the man who is speaking right now, me, when I say I am God, I mean I am God and so are you. So is the majestic mantis, so are the earthworms squirming around on their bellies, the rolling clouds, the mysteries of the sea, the dearest of friends and the greatest of foes. It's all God at various stages of realization. Now, if you walk this path and happen to start thinking that you and you alone are the one and only God, then you're doing it wrong and you've missed the point. Yes, there's always a risk of missing the point when delving into the magical waters, but that's a shared risk for every human, regardless of their spiritual or non-spiritual paths. It's called ego inflation. Christians fall into this trap, atheists fall into this trap, yogis fall into this trap, and so do the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. When the intellectual son of a person advances without the love of the spiritual son, the Father, it's what's known as the Luciferian intellect. And I look at Luciferian intellect as all facts, no truth. Science is the new religion vibes. To learn more about the three sons, you can watch my video on Soul, S-O-L, being a universal deity. All that being said, Luciferian and Christ consciousness are two sides of the same coin. When spiritual truths pair with intellectual realities, they form the mind of Christ. And Satan and Lucifer are actually two distinctly separate forces, yet most of the exoteric world views Satan and Lucifer as the same being. The so-called Satan that Satanists have made into the mascot of their anti-religion is an inversion of Christianity. Satan is the supervillain of the Christian saga. Now, I think Satanism is really interesting, and I don't judge people for choosing that path. I also know some Satanists who are pretty cool and kind people. Having said that, being a Satanist is taking the Christian story and choosing to identify with the losing character. To be a Satanist is to be an anti-Christian, and to be an anti-Christian is to be a Christian, a shadow Christian. Being anti-anything is still being part of that thing. If you have a friend that can't seem to stop talking about how much they hate their ex, it actually means that they're still in love with their ex. Or at least the rom-com interpretation of what being in love is. That's not real love though. Jimmy doesn't actually still love Sally, and Jimmy doesn't actually still love Jesus. Jimmy is still attached to Sally, and Jimmy is still attached to the fundamentalist idea of the Christian Jesus. And yes, for this illustration, Jimmy is a Satanist who recently broke up with a woman named Sally. Jimmy knows there's more to the universe than church, and he knows there's more to life than his toxic relationship with Sally. Him being aware of this is a good thing. his daemon is not being fulfilled. But because Jimmy doesn't know who he is yet, his choice is to be against who he isn't instead of being for who he is. Being a rebel without a cause is sometimes the first step, which is why I think the journey of finding divinity in darkness is beautiful. I've never been a proper practicing Satanist, but I've definitely had seasons of looking for divinity in darkness. And guess what? It's part of the journey, and I came out on the other end all right. All of that to say, high magic is not Satanism. I appreciate this next comment that I'm about to read, and I'm thankful for the person who wrote it. Quote, all caps, do not do the hexagram rituals as a beginner. 2 exclamation points, end quote. Wow, that's intense. When I was a beginner, warnings like this encouraged me. In a world of fads pumped out by televisions, billboards, newspapers, and now the internet, it's refreshing to hear that something other than a drug can actually cause change. Quote, these are planetary energies that you are more than likely not ready for if you're still doing the elemental work. Most of you won't even need to involve the planets if you balance and integrate your elements. I've seen person after person get into this and end up in the Zodiac and Qliphoth within the first year or 2. End quote. Although it's wise to gain control over elemental energy before jumping into planetary energy, you have a lot of time to correct and adjust before you'd end up in the Zodiac and Qliphoth. And yes, quote, most of you won't even need to involve planets if you balance and integrate your elements, end quote. True, but you don't need to do magic in the first place. You don't need to do any of this stuff. Most people will eventually reach a heavenly state of consciousness in this life or the next simply by doing a little bit of yoga and meditation every day. Meeting up with a spiritual group once a week, having a family, playing with your kids outside, and simply just being decent to fellow humans. Magic is for people who want to do it. And something about magic that has always been inherently exciting to me has been the idea of how far can we go? What else is out there? How can energy continue to be transformed and refined? Planetary energies are more specific and refined than elemental energies, which is why we work with the hexagrams and do stuff with planets. Working with planetary energies is where manifestation starts to get really interesting. Quote, I've seen person after person get into this and end up in the Zodiac and Qliphoth within the first year or 2, end quote. Yes, I've seen that in many various forms also, but I've also seen people get lost for a time and then come back to truth with an even deeper knowing because of the time they spent in their wilderness years. Everyone's journey's a bit different. Some are wild and learn by bleeding a little bit. Others learn best by playing it safe. Quote, if you unbalance these energies, you're going to create so many distractions and blockages for yourself. Begin with the elemental work until you have total control of your elements or close to it. Breath, thought, energy, imagination, and posture. Edit. In my haste, I neglected to address the quality of this video, especially the opening statement of essentially setting and forgetting a morning routine. This is related to the first degree of the mystery of the golem. End quote. I'm not claiming my elements are in pristine harmony at all times, and I'm not saying this person's elements are imbalanced. But balance doesn't operate in haste, and it's often the case that intense warnings are projections of a person's own inner fears. I'm not saying that this is true for the person who wrote the comment. It is not my intention to put anyone on blast, which is why I'm not reading the names of these comments anymore. Everyone is welcome to speak freely on MageSpace. I love the people who have chosen to watch these videos, and disagreements should be loving and interesting conversations that lead to growth. I like practicing magic without fears. I like living life without fears. My intention every day is to live life in a state of wondrous expectation. Damien Eccles once talked about how in prison, while practicing magic and reading various different occult books, he enjoyed watching Joel Osteen when television was available to him. Damien Eccles, author of High Magic, spent many years on death row for a crime he didn't commit. And he was convicted in large part due to satanic panic propagated by fundamentalist Christians. So if anyone has a legitimate reason to be angry at Christians, it's Damien Eccles. Yet Joel Osteen's words about living in a state of wondrous expectation spoke to Damien, and it speaks to me. Golden Dawn magic on the outside looks pagan, but as you delve deeper into the grades, it starts to look rather Christian. And as you delve even deeper and deeper, magic becomes whatever you want it to be. Thank you for watching. Tap like if you enjoyed this video, comment your truth if you'd care to share, and feel free to ask a question if you have one. Subscribe for more videos like this. Peace.